Welcome to Night Stories from VHS Era. You've arrived at a place where the glow of old television screens, the hum of rewinding tapes, and the softness of forgotten childhood dreams come alive once more. Each night will take a quiet journey back in time to sleepy suburbs, moonlit driveways, warm summer breezes, and the kind of memories that feel just a little too magical to be real. Here you don't need to worry. Just press play and let the night unfold. Before we begin tonight's story, let's take a moment to slow down. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it gently. And now, exhale slowly through your mouth. Let the day melt away with that breath. Again, breathe in deeply. Feel your shoulders soften. Now, release and let go of everything you don't need to carry right now. Imagine you're lying on a cozy bed in your childhood room. Outside, the wind hums softly. The light from a small lamp glows like a warm memory, and the sound of a distant VHS tape spinning fills the air with comfort. You are safe. You are still. And the night is yours. Let's begin tonight's story.
Welcome back to Night Stories from VHS Era. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Do you remember what it felt like to leave home with scraped knees, a full belly, and nothing but the day ahead of you? Did you ever disappear into your neighborhood with no phone, no messages, and no one really knowing where you were, but somehow everything was okay? And do you remember the moment the streetlights flickered on and we just knew it was time to go home? Stay with me until the end of this video, because tonight I'll take you back to that forgotten rhythm of childhood, the one where time wasn't measured by screens or notifications, but by the shifting light in the sky, the growl in our stomachs, and the echoes of our names being softly called from porches as the sun bowed out for the night. Let me tell you how it truly felt to leave the house after breakfast and only return when the sunset painted everything gold. It always began the same way. A bowl of cereal, usually Cinnamon Toast Crunch, or maybe Lucky Charms if my mom had given in to my begging during our last trip to A&P. The milk was always cold, the cartoons still buzzing faintly on the TV in the next room, and the sun already creeping through the curtains in strips of golden promise. My sneakers were already by the back door, and my bike was leaning against the side of the garage, dusty from the adventure of the day before. There was something about that first step out the door that made the whole world feel infinite. I didn't carry a phone, not even a watch. No one did. My mom just said, "Be back when the lights come on." And somehow, that was all the structure we needed. Did you ever live like that? Free of clocks, free of digital leashes, moving only by instinct and the sun above your head? I did, and it felt like magic. Our world was our neighborhood, a patchwork of backyards, creaky wooden fences, chalk-covered driveways, and the occasional garden hose we'd use as a makeshift sprinkler. There were always 5 or 6 of us, gathering like clockwork, even though no clock had summoned us. We just knew when it was time. There was Tommy with his bright red LA Light sneakers that blinked when he ran. Sarah, who always had a new scrunchie in her hair and a Band-Aid on her elbow. Marcus, who brought his Super Soaker 100 and never hesitated to drench anyone who crossed him. We'd hop on our bikes and cruise down the pavement like we owned it, the sound of our tires humming over sidewalk cracks like a summer symphony. Do you remember that sound? That steady rhythm of spinning spokes and the wind in your ears? We'd race past Mr. Grant's house with the barking dog, cut through the empty lot where the weeds grew wild and tall, and end up at the little creek that ran just beyond the school playground. That creek was our world. We built forts from branches, fished with string and paper clips, and caught frogs that we swore we'd keep alive in shoeboxes. Of course, they never lasted more than a day. We didn't need texts or GPS or digital check-ins. We had landmarks. The big oak tree that split into 3 trunks. The mailbox with the dent from when Ricky tried to jump it with his bike. The rusted shopping cart abandoned behind the corner store. That's how we knew where we were, and somehow that was enough. There was a calm in that chaos. No one panicked if you weren't seen for a few hours. You were just out, and that was enough of a status update. The rule was simple: be back when the streetlights came on, and we always were. Somehow, we just knew when the day was winding down. Maybe it was the way the sun dipped lower, how the breeze turned a little cooler, or how the crickets started singing louder in the grass. Or maybe it was just the deep, old rhythm of being a kid in the summer. We never had snacks packed neatly in bags. We scavenged. A can of high C from someone's garage fridge. A melted Charleston Chew from the corner store if we had a quarter between us. Sometimes someone's mom would bring out a pitcher of lemonade and a tray of Oreos, and we'd sit there, our faces sticky, laughing at absolutely nothing and everything all at once. Did you ever lay on the grass and look at the clouds for hours, talking about what shapes you saw or what kind of treehouse you'd build if you could build the best one ever? We did. And even though none of us ever built one, it didn't matter. The idea was enough. As the sun lowered itself gently behind the rooftops, the sky would change from a deep blue to a soft orange, then a gentle purple that made everything feel quiet. We'd hear it first, that soft click as the streetlight at the end of the road buzzed to life. One by one, those amber lights blinked on, casting a golden halo over the familiar streets. That was our signal. No alarms, no calls, just that glow in the sky that told us the day had given all it had to give. We'd ride home slowly, not because we were tired, but because we weren't quite ready to let go. But we always did. We always made it home. And when I think back now, I wonder, how did we know how to come back? How did our parents trust us out there without supervision for hours and hours? The truth is, they just did. And we trusted the day to take care of us, and it always did. So to answer the questions I asked you at the beginning, yes, I remember what it felt like to leave home with only sunlight and adventure ahead. Yes, I did disappear into the wild unknown of the neighborhood with no one checking in, and I came back safely every time. And yes, I remember exactly how it felt when the streetlights came on and we rode our bikes home under that glowing sky, hearts full and feet dirty. That's how it was to play outside all day before smartphones existed. And oh, how I miss it. There was something about the way the world looked in the morning light back then, how the sun seemed to promise more than just warmth. It promised adventure. As soon as we were out the door, shoes barely tied and hair still messy from sleep, our minds clicked into a different mode. It wasn't just another day outside. It was a brand new chapter in a story only we could write. Did you ever hold a stick and believe it was a sword? Not pretend it was, but truly believe it? Feel its weight in your hand, the way it sliced through the wind, the way it made you stand a little taller, move a little braver? We did. Every tree branch that snapped with the right shape and length became a weapon of great legend. We weren't just kids in sneakers. We were knights defending castles, warriors exploring uncharted jungles, heroes racing through magical forests. Our backyard wasn't a backyard. It was a battlefield, a kingdom, a treasure map. Some sticks were better than others. We had rules about it, though they were unwritten and changed depending on who found the best one. If a stick had a knot at the end, it became a hammer. If it was long and slender, it was a fencing sword. If it split at the end like a fork, well, that was clearly a slingshot in the making. We'd duel each other in slow motion, leaping off tree stumps and swinging through the air, shouting sound effects as we clashed with invisible enemies. Sometimes we'd make shields out of pizza boxes left over from the night before. taping them with duct tape and drawing crests on them with Sharpies. Did you ever do that? Turn a leftover cardboard box into a knight's shield? I can still remember how proud we felt, holding those wobbly shields like we were invincible. And when we weren't sword fighting, we were racing. The sidewalks of our neighborhood became our racetracks. Cracked, uneven, full of bumps and chalk drawings, but to us, they were smoother than any Formula One track on television. We'd line up our bikes at the top of the street and count down loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. 3, 2, 1, go! And off we went, legs pumping, hair whipping in the wind, eyes fixed ahead like our lives depended on winning. Did you ever race so hard you thought your heart might burst? Not from fear, but from the thrill of it. That delicious feeling of being right on the edge of control, the tires skimming the curb, the wind rushing past your ears. We did, and it never got old. Sometimes we raced on scooters. You remember those clunky metal ones? Not the sleek electric ones now, but the kind where the handlebar stuck if you turned too hard and the wheels rattled like they might fall off. Or we raced with rollerblades, the kind that needed those weird plastic keys to tighten them. If you didn't wear knee pads, you'd end up with a fresh set of scabs by nightfall, but that never stopped us. Every crack in the pavement was a potential danger. If your wheel caught one wrong, you'd go flying. And when you did, the fall didn't come with lawsuits or phone calls or recorded videos. It came with laughter, bruises, maybe a trip to someone's kitchen for hydrogen peroxide and a colorful Band-Aid. Then we'd be back outside, helmets askew, daring each other to go even faster. What made it so magical? It wasn't the speed or the gear or even the games themselves. It was the imagination behind everything. A stick wasn't a stick. A sidewalk wasn't just concrete. Every item, every space, every sound became part of a world we created together. And when we ran down the street, yelling and waving our wooden swords, we didn't see driveways and mailboxes. We saw dragons, castles, and gates to other realms. I remember one summer afternoon when the clouds were low and heavy, but the rain hadn't started yet. The air was thick, the kind that made your shirt stick to your back. We decided the weather meant something. We decided the storm was a signal. A great battle was about to begin. We grabbed our best sticks, the ones we'd hidden behind the bush near the end of the street, our secret arsenal. We split into teams, each side with its own fortress made from lawn chairs and overturned recycling bins, and we fought. Not for real, of course, but in our minds, it was a fight for the ages. And in the middle of it all, someone yelled, "The sidewalk is lava!" Suddenly, we were leaping from grass to curb, careful not to touch the concrete. The lava game always came out of nowhere, didn't it? One minute we were running a race, and the next, the very ground beneath our feet was deadly. There was no warning, just one kid with a spark of imagination, and suddenly everything changed. We built go-karts from milk crates and roller skate wheels. We pushed each other down the street and into bushes. We used chalk to draw starting lines and finish lines, and sometimes whole cities. I remember drawing an entire downtown once, complete with stores, parking lots, and a park. Each of us picked a building and played there for hours. We were store clerks, police officers, restaurant owners. There were no screens, no apps, just us, the sidewalk, and a few pieces of colored chalk. Do you remember your favorite stick? Or the fastest you ever rode your bike? Maybe it wasn't the object or the speed that mattered, but how you felt in that moment. That perfect mix of excitement and freedom, like nothing else existed except right then. That's what I remember most. Not the things we held, but how they made us feel. Strong, wild, alive. There was a time I found a branch that looked exactly like a bow and a staff. I wrapped the handle in tape and even carved my initials into it. I named it Thunder because in my world, I was the last guardian of a hidden village, and that stick was the only thing keeping the shadows away. That stick lasted the entire summer, and when it finally broke, snapped clean in half after I tried to vault over a fence, I buried it in the garden like a warrior laying down his weapon. I cried, not because of the stick really, but because something bigger had ended. something I couldn't name at the time. Looking back, I know now. It wasn't just about the toys or the games. It was about how real it all felt. The magic we poured into the ordinary. The way a simple stick or a stretch of sidewalk could transform our entire world. That kind of imagination doesn't need batteries or buttons. It only needs time, freedom, and a group of kids who believe. And believe we did. I remember there was a particular magic that descended on the neighborhood when the sun started to slip behind the houses and the sky turned orange, then purple, then that deep shade of blue that only children out past dinner really noticed. That was when hide and seek became more than just a game. It became a ritual. We didn't need a clock to tell us the time. The shifting shadows told us. The buzzing of the streetlights trying to come alive told us. And when we saw 1 or 2 porch lights flicker on, that was the signal. The best part of the day was about to begin. We'd gather in the same spot, by the hedge near the end of the street. It was where every game began. No one ever said it was the rule, it just was. Maybe it had the best hiding spots, or maybe it was the only place where no adult would come outside and yell that it was too late. We took turns being it, our eyes covered with dirty hands, counting aloud while the rest of us scattered like leaves in the wind. And oh, the thrill of running with your breath caught in your throat, not from fear, but from anticipation. You never forget that sound. The muffled giggles from behind a garbage can, the sharp snap of a twig when someone steps wrong, the whispered shh when someone hides too close and knows they're about to be found. We became shadows ourselves, melting into bushes, squeezing behind air conditioning units, flattening against fences like spies in a Cold War movie. We were silent, almost reverent, because if you got caught too soon, the night ended early for you. But if you made it until the seeker gave up, oh, you were a legend. And it always got darker than we expected. We'd start the game while there was still light in the sky, but by the time the seeker reached 30, always 30, never more, never less, the world was already changing. Familiar shapes became strange. That bush you always hid behind now looked like it had something hiding in it. That gate you knew how to slip through suddenly squeaked too loud. And the shadows, they moved differently. Or maybe we just imagined they did. That was the thrill of it. Do you remember hiding so still your muscles started to cramp? The way you'd try not to breathe too loudly, your ears tuned to every footstep, every cough, every false alarm. I remember once I hid behind a car tire so long, I started imagining the asphalt had a heartbeat. Another time, I curled into the tiny space between the recycling bins and the fence, and I could hear the bugs crawling in the grass just inches from my face. I wanted to scream, but I didn't, because I knew if I could last 5 more minutes, I'd win. And when someone was caught, you'd hear the chase before you saw it. The pounding footsteps, the shrieking laughter, the desperate run for the base, some cracked section of sidewalk or the corner mailbox. If the runner made it in time, they'd throw themselves onto the base like they just survived a war. And if they didn't, if they were tagged before they touched it, the whole street would erupt in cheers and groans. But the best part was when we kept going even after it got too dark to really see. That's when the game shifted. It became something more, something sacred. We didn't just hide, we vanished. We didn't just seek, we hunted. The streetlights flickered on one by one, casting yellow pools of light that didn't quite reach the shadows. The wind got colder, the insects got louder, and still we played. There was a rule, unspoken, and no one would use a flashlight. That would have broken the spell. The darkness wasn't the enemy, it was part of the game. It made every corner mysterious, every rustle of leaves a potential threat, every breath in the silence a clue. And there was always that one friend who took the game too seriously, disappearing for what felt like hours, until someone had to break character and yell, "Okay, seriously, where are you?" Only then would they emerge from some impossible hiding place, smug and triumphant, their knees scraped and their arms covered in cobwebs. I remember the night I got so scared I almost cried. I was hiding behind my neighbor's shed, pressed up against the cold wooden slats, when I heard something moving near me, something not part of the game. It might have been a raccoon, maybe just the wind through the tall grass, but in that moment, it felt like the darkness itself had noticed me. My heart thumped so loud, I was sure I'd be found, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Not because of fear, but because I didn't want the magic to end. Eventually, someone's mom would call out. The sound cut through the game like a bell tolling the end of a festival. We'd pause, frozen in our hiding spots, unsure whether to keep playing or answer the call. Then another mom, and another. The chorus of names being called one by one was the final sign. The night was over. We'd gather back at the starting spot, dusty, scratched, breathless. Someone would say, "Let's play again tomorrow," and we'd all nod. Of course we would. There was never any doubt. As we walked home, the heat of the day finally gone, the chill of the evening settling in, we felt something most grown-ups have forgotten. We felt full. Not the kind of full from food or noise or winning, but full of life. Full of laughter, fear, wonder, and friendship. It wasn't just hide and seek. It was everything. It was a moment where time disappeared, where nothing else mattered except staying hidden a little longer, running a little faster, and holding on to that magic before it slipped away. And somehow, even now, if I stand in a quiet backyard at dusk and the wind moves just right, I swear I can still hear it. The laughter in the dark, the sound of feet on pavement, the distant voice counting up to 30. There was a time when bicycles were more than just bikes. They were our armor, our vehicles, our declarations of independence. No one told us when the tradition started, but it felt ancient, like some unwritten code passed down from the older kids, maybe even older siblings who'd moved on from our streets. We didn't just ride for fun. We rode like we had a purpose, like we were chasing something only we could see. The sidewalk wasn't a sidewalk. It was a racetrack, a battlefield, a map of secret paths leading to adventure. The road belonged to us. The wind belonged to us. And for those golden hours, we belonged only to ourselves. Our bikes weren't all the same, but they were equally loved. Mine had a squeaky chain and a crooked handlebar I never fixed, because by then it had become a personality trait. One friend had a banana seat with flames on the side. Another had one of those impossible to pop tires. We had no helmets, no reflectors, no adult supervision. Just the occasional clothespin clamping a playing card to the wheel spokes to make that sweet engine sound. Some of us had baskets or milk crates zip-tied to the back for snacks, water bottles, or walkie-talkies. One even had a plastic horn that sounded like a goose being strangled. We called him the Navigator. We always started at the same place, the top of the neighborhood hill, the highest point before the street dipped into its winding descent. It was our launch pad. We lined up, waiting for some silent, invisible signal. Then we pushed off, all at once, pedaling hard, tires spinning, laughter erupting as we flew downhill like missiles. It wasn't about speed. It was about feeling alive. Hair pulled back by the wind, shirts flapping like capes. We imagined ourselves as everything: explorers, escape artists, freedom fighters. Sometimes we'd make up missions, fake emergencies. One afternoon, we pretended a meteor had crashed somewhere near the elementary school. We had to reach it before the military did. Another day, we swore we were transporting secret documents to an underground resistance and had to avoid the watchers, our own parents, peering through windows with laundry baskets in their arms. And then there were times we just rode, silent, focused, as if pedaling could take us further than the limits of our small world. We had a map in our minds, Every alley, every shortcut between backyards, every gravel lot with a dip we used as a jump. We knew which driveways you could cut through without getting yelled at. We knew which houses had dogs you had to pedal past quickly, and which fences had gaps wide enough to squeeze through if you were being chased. If we passed another group of kids on bikes, it was a showdown. A slow circle, like cowboys at high noon, waiting to see who turned off first. Sometimes it led to a spontaneous race. Sometimes it led to standoffs of pure, wordless intimidation. But most times it ended in awkward nods and a shared understanding. This street was taken.
And there was a kind of democracy to the pack. No one ever said who was the leader, but we all knew who it was. It shifted too. Some days the fastest kid, other days the one who knew the coolest path to the store. We followed without question, not because we were mindless, but because it was safe to trust. On wheels, in motion, we felt like one organism, a creature with many legs riding toward destiny. We weren't escaping anything, we were chasing something, something we couldn't name, but felt like truth or joy, or just the kind of freedom that makes your chest hurt from smiling too much. I remember one summer evening when the sky was streaked with pink and gold and we took a wrong turn on purpose. There was a part of the neighborhood we weren't supposed to go. Not dangerous, just unfamiliar. A new development with empty lots and fresh concrete. The air smelled different. The silence was thick. It felt like exploring a forgotten city. We didn't speak, just rode in a single file line, tires crackling over gravel, eyes wide. We imagined we were the first humans to ever set foot there. Eventually, someone's bike chain snapped. It always happened. And while we took turns pretending to be mechanics, someone else would pull out the cheap fruit snacks we carried, and we'd sit on the curb, legs stretched out, helmets dangling from handlebars, laughing at the stupidest things. That's when time would slow down, when the sun dipped lower and the air began to cool, and we knew we'd have to start heading back soon, but not just yet. Riding back home was never in a rush. It was slow, savoring. We'd take the long way, circle the block once more, cut through the playground even though it added 5 extra minutes. There was an unspoken sadness in that part of the ride, the knowing that the day was over and nothing we did tomorrow would be exactly the same. But that was okay. It made the ride home sacred, like a closing chapter of a book you didn't want to end. We'd finally split off one by one, each peeling away down a familiar driveway or across a yard. The last rider would raise a hand in farewell, and we'd raise ours in return, not needing words, just that gesture, simple and full. Then, silence. Even now, when I drive through a neighborhood and see a kid on a bike alone, I wonder where their pack is. I wonder if they still make up missions, if the sidewalk still feels like a secret trail, if the wind on their face still tastes like pure freedom. I hope it does. I really hope it does. Some memories don't sparkle on their own. They don't come wrapped in gold or dressed up in meaning. They just sit quietly in the corners of your mind until something ordinary wakes them up, like the taste of hose water on a hot day, that metallic, sun-warmed tang, cold but not ice cold, rusty but somehow refreshing, the kind of drink you'd never pour into a glass, never find bottled, never choose on a menu. But in those moments, after endless rounds of tag, after chasing each other on bikes, after running barefoot through grass that left little green stains on our ankles, it was the best thing in the world. The hose was sacred, coiled like a lazy snake beside the garage or looped awkwardly on a wall hook that had seen better days. There was always that initial spurt, the sputter, the hiss, the sudden spray of hot water that had been sitting inside like it had been cooked. We knew to let that part pass. We'd drop the hose, let it spit onto the driveway, watching the steam rise from the pavement, before picking it back up and pressing it between our teeth like pirates with daggers. That's how you drank it. No cups, no turns, just open jaws, loud gulps, and water that somehow hit different. There was no talk of bacteria, no worries about lead or filters. If the hose was green and kinked and laying in the sun, it was good enough. Sometimes we'd pinch the end to spray each other, but mostly we used it like a fountain. Someone would shout, "I'm dying of thirst," and we'd all sprint to the side of the house like a fire alarm had gone off. We didn't wait in lines, we didn't ration. We shoved each other, laughed with wet chins, and drank like animals who'd found an oasis. And oh, the way it tasted. Sharp, almost electric. The kind of flavor that couldn't be explained, only remembered. It clung to your tongue. It felt like summer in your throat. And it didn't matter that your hands were dirty, or your shirt was soaked with sweat, or your knees were scraped raw from falling earlier. In that brief, glorious moment, water from the hose was life itself. It refilled us, rewound us, recharged us for the next chapter of play that waited just beyond the corner. We'd return to the backyard, dripping and revitalized. The hose left little puddles on the concrete, and we'd walk through them on purpose, letting the cool water soak into our socks or splash against our shins. Grass stuck to our ankles, dirt turned to mud under our toes. None of it bothered us. If anything, it felt right. Our bodies were maps of the afternoon, each mark a story, each stain a badge. Our laughter came easier after a drink. Our energy surged again, ready to chase, to hide, to run in circles until the sky turned soft. We'd return to the backyard, dripping and revitalized. The hose left little puddles on the concrete, and we'd walk through them on purpose, letting the cool water soak into our socks or splash against our shins. Grass stuck to our ankles, dirt turned to mud under our toes. None of it bothered us. If anything, it felt right. Our bodies were maps of the afternoon, each mark a story, each stain a badge. Our laughter came easier after a drink. Our energy surged again, ready to chase, to hide, to run in circles until the sky turned soft. Sometimes the hose doubled as a weapon. Someone would sneak back, twist the spigot, and unleash a sneak attack on the rest of us. The shrieks, the gasps, the mad dash for cover. And then, inevitably, someone else would wrestle for control, and it turned into a full-blown war. We aimed high, we aimed low, we sprayed the dog by accident, or maybe on purpose. The water pressure wasn't strong, but it was enough to turn an ordinary afternoon into chaos. Good chaos, the kind that leaves your cheeks sore from smiling. There were also moments of calm, when the yard was quiet, when the heat hung low and heavy, and someone just sat near the hose, gently washing dirt off their hands. It wasn't always about noise. Sometimes it was just about being still, watching the water trickle over the grass, watching it snake through the cracks in the driveway, carrying pebbles and twigs like tiny boats on a river. There was peace in that, a kind of mindfulness we didn't have a name for yet, but it settled into our bones, a gentle hush between bursts of wildness. The hose was always there, reliable, honest, never locked up, never off limits. It didn't care who you were or where you'd been. It didn't ask for anything, just twisted open and gave again and again. I think that's why we loved it, not just for the thirst it quenched, but for the simplicity it offered. No rules, no waiting, just you, your thirst, and a little green snake ready to spill out summer. Now, whenever I see a garden hose curled up in someone's yard, I pause. I wonder if kids still run to it, if they still know that trick of letting the first burst run warm, if they still drink like they've been crawling through a desert of fun, or if it just sits there now, waiting to be remembered, like a forgotten friend from a chapter long gone. The taste is still with me, somewhere deep, a mix of tin and sun and joy. Not something you can recreate, not something you can bottle, just one of those strange, perfect things that belonged only to us in that brief time when the world was smaller, wilder, and wonderfully unfiltered. Rules, when you're a kid, are flexible. They bend, stretch, twist into knots, and sometimes break entirely, and that's exactly how we like them. We didn't need referees in our world. No one wore a whistle, no one held a stopwatch, and no one ever said the word official. Our games weren't found in books. They were born in the cracks of boredom, in the lull between hide-and-seek rounds, in the quiet that came after someone's mom yelled that dinner was still 30 minutes away. That's when creativity bloomed like weeds in the sidewalk.
We played on streets, in yards, in patches of dirt, and fields filled with wild grass and bugs. There was no shortage of imagination. One day the game was called Ghost Catchers. The next, Lava Ball, or Fence Tag, or Spy Wars. The names didn't matter. The rules barely lasted past the second round. We'd shout out some made-up guidelines as we ran. No touching the ground after 3 hops. Or you can only be saved if you sing the theme song. And somehow everyone understood, or pretended to. Half the fun was arguing about what counted and what didn't. A foot over the line? Depends who saw it. Tagged or not tagged? Let's vote. Out or safe? Let's replay. There was something magical about that democracy of children. We governed ourselves with the seriousness of diplomats and the emotional chaos of pirates. We'd huddle to debate penalties and loopholes, hands waving, voices overlapping, faces smeared with dirt and sun. Someone would always say, "That's not fair," and someone else would counter, "It is now." There were no written rules, only spoken ones. And spoken rules were made to change, especially if they didn't benefit you. But we accepted it. We forgave the flaws. We wanted the game to continue more than we wanted to be right. We invented whole worlds. One week, our street became a post-apocalyptic wasteland, each mailbox a checkpoint, each driveway a danger zone. The next, we were knights with pool noodles for swords, galloping across imaginary kingdoms. Sometimes the game had no name at all, just a feeling, a rhythm, a shared momentum that pulled us forward. Our shoes left streaks on the pavement. Our laughter echoed off garage doors and fences. Nobody was filming. Nobody was tweeting the score. We weren't playing for attention. We were playing because we could. There were no trophies, no coaches, no one telling us who was good or bad. You could be the smallest kid and still end up as king, as long as you had a loud enough voice or a cool enough idea. We swapped leaders with each game, sometimes by vote, sometimes by accident. You won power by daring to invent. You kept it by keeping things fun. It was our earliest lesson in leadership, in compromise, in letting things go when your idea didn't fly. If your rule made everyone groan, you dropped it. If someone cried, we stopped the game and figured out how to fix it. Not always gracefully, but always together.
Arguments happened, of course. There were tantrums and flared tempers, storm-offs and sudden silences. But within minutes, sometimes seconds, someone would shout a new twist to the rules, and just like that, we were all running again. The game was the glue. It kept us together, kept the day alive, pushed the setting sun further back. Even when the porch lights blinked on and shadows stretched across the lawns, we squeezed in one last round. "Sudden death," someone would shout, and no matter how tired or hungry we were, we agreed. The best games always felt a little dangerous. Not in the physical sense, though yes, someone always ended up with a bruised shin or a grass-stained elbow, but in the freedom they gave us. The freedom to decide, to imagine, to create something entirely ours. No adults hovering, no rules printed on laminated paper, just childhood in its rawest form, messy, loud, and endlessly inventive. Looking back, I think we were learning more than we realized. We were practicing empathy when we changed a rule to include the younger kid who couldn't run fast enough. We were building resilience when our ideas got rejected. We were mastering negotiation, conflict resolution, storytelling, all hidden inside a game where you could only score points by jumping backwards while naming fruits in alphabetical order. That was the beauty of it, learning without knowing, growth disguised as play. Now, when I see a group of kids gathered around a ball or huddled near a sidewalk chalk diagram that makes no sense to the adult eye, I smile, because I know what's happening. I know the joy of the rule that only lasts for the afternoon, the power of making something from nothing, the courage to play without needing to win. And if I close my eyes long enough, I can hear our voices again, rising and falling like the wind, debating, laughing, deciding what's fair and what isn't. Not because there was a prize, but because we knew the day wouldn't last forever. So we played it out, rule by invented rule, until the light disappeared, until the game folded into memory. And then, as always, we promised to pick it up again tomorrow.
Pain, in those days, had a different weight. It didn't stop us, it didn't slow us down, it barely made a dent. A scraped knee was just part of the story, a chapter in the afternoon's adventure. Blood, if it came, was noticed only after the excitement passed. We'd look down, see the red, and say, cool. We didn't run inside to clean it. We didn't cry unless it really hurt. And even then, the tears were brief and interrupted by someone yelling, hurry up, you're missing it. So we dusted ourselves off, wiped our hands on our shirts, and ran again. Our hands were never clean, not once. They were caked in dirt, chalk, tree sap, grass stains, and sometimes the stickiness of a melted candy found in a jacket pocket. But those hands built forts from scrap wood and leaves. They dug tunnels for ants and molded mud into pretend food. They grabbed onto tree branches like monkey bars and balanced on fences like tight ropes. They held other hands in moments of shared discovery, like when we found a frog or a secret coin buried in the dirt, and they high-fived in triumph after completing some made-up mission. Our hands told stories that no words could match. Shoes wore out faster back then, and knees were in a constant state of healing. Scabs overlapped like layers, and we took pride in pointing them out. This one's from the big hill, someone would say, proudly pulling up their pant leg. We wore our wounds like armor, like proof that we didn't back down. We climbed higher than we should have, jumped farther than we were supposed to, and always ignored the voice in our heads or the one from a friend that said, you're gonna fall. Because falling was part of the deal. A little pain was expected. What mattered was getting back up before someone else reached the finish line. There was a kind of bravery in that. Not the kind you read about in books or see in movies, but the quiet courage of everyday recklessness, of trusting your legs on uneven pavement, of believing you could leap the ditch, outrun the bike, hang from the tree limb just a second longer. Sometimes we didn't make it. We got bruised or winded or knocked the air right out of our lungs with a bad landing. But we never treated it like failure. It was simply a checkpoint, another badge earned, another reason to laugh later when the story got retold, exaggerated, and immortalized. And the thing is, we never complained, not really. Not unless an adult was watching, and even then it was half-hearted. Complaining meant sitting out. It meant missing the next round, the next climb, the next wild idea that someone was already shouting from across the yard. And missing out, that was worse than any scrape or bruise. So we shook off the sting, made a face, maybe sucked in our breath, and kept going. Pain was background noise. Adventure was the anthem.
We lived fully in our skin, no matter how battered it got. Our elbows were raw from crawling under fences. Our legs were speckled with bug bites and mystery scratches. Our clothes carried the marks of the day, streaks of dirt, smeared popsicle juice, patches of grass ground into the fabric. We were walking canvases of childhood, and the art was in the mess. Mom sighed, of course. They soaked, scrubbed, and stitched, but they knew better than to try to keep us clean. Clean kids weren't having fun. Sometimes we played doctor with each other, dabbing spit on cuts or wrapping Band-Aids way too tight. A friend's backpack might have one crumpled tissue and a half-used ointment tube. Someone's older sibling might yell, "Just rub dirt on it," and we believed it might actually help. We learned in our own way how to care for one another. Not gently, not perfectly, but sincerely. A slap on the back, "You're fine." A nod that said, "Let's go." There was trust in that world. Trust in our bodies, in our friends, in the understanding that no matter how many times we fell, we'd be okay. The ground would hurt, sure, but it wasn't out to get us. It was just part of the landscape. And with each wound, we toughened a bit. Not in a hard, jaded way, but in the way you do when you learn that life can sting and still be wonderful. That pain and joy are neighbors, and sometimes they hold hands. Looking back, I miss those days not because they were simple, but because they were honest. A scraped knee wasn't something to fix right away. It was something to live with, to talk about later, to remember. A dirty hand wasn't a failure of hygiene. It was evidence of curiosity. And not complaining? That was our silent way of saying we were strong, that the fun outweighed the hurt, that we knew the difference between real pain and a temporary sting. Childhood was loud, fast, messy, and it was ours. Every mark on our skin told a story, and even now I carry them with me, invisible but alive. They remind me of who I was when nothing could stop me, not even the blood trickling down my shin. They remind me that the best adventures leave a mark, and that sometimes the bravest thing a kid can do is fall, laugh, and get back up again. Every neighborhood had its own version of secrecy. For us, it came in the form of whispered words behind cupped hands, scribbled symbols on notebook paper, and elaborate passwords no adult could ever guess. Secret codes were our currency, the way we protected our ideas and filtered the outsiders from the initiated. Each syllable, every strange handshake or gesture was more than just make-believe, it was sacred. It made us feel like architects of mystery, creators of something only we understood. If you knew the code, you belonged. If you didn't, you had to earn it. We took our missions seriously. We built clubhouses with scraps and imagination, nothing more. Old cardboard boxes became headquarters. A triangle of bushes transformed into a secret base. Blankets clipped to chairs or stretched between trees turned into military forts, royal palaces, or moon stations. We operated in shadows, using flashlights as torches and markers as weapons. Behind the curtains of those makeshift walls, we planned adventures, held imaginary meetings, and created laws no grown-up would ever agree to. One day we were spies, the next pirates. The roles shifted, but the feeling of unity never changed. Beneath staircases, inside garages, under porches, our hideouts lived wherever we could find a sliver of space and just enough time before someone's parent called us in for dinner. These places felt sacred. We'd give them names like the Thunder Den or Operation Foxhole, and we'd guard them with booby traps made of string, cans, and our own warnings scratched into cardboard signs. Keep out or else. And the else was undefined, but terrifying, even to us. We posted watch shifts, rotated leadership, and once wrote a 10-rule constitution on a pizza box lid. It got rained on and dissolved 2 days later, but the memory remained ironclad. Inside those secret shelters, time moved differently. You could spend hours just designing the next code or decorating the interior with bottle caps, stickers, or hand-drawn flags. We used chalk like architects, plotting escape routes on the sidewalk and drawing blueprints no one but us could read. Conversations were half whispers and exaggerated gasps. A rustle in the bushes turned into a spy approaching. A neighbor's cat, clearly a disguised enemy agent. It was a game, but it felt more than that. It was the beginning of how we learned to imagine without limits. We had rules, of course. A member who betrayed the club, like letting a younger sibling inside without clearance, could face a suspension, usually for an hour or two. Then we'd forgive and forget, because really, no one wanted to be left out for long. And besides, the magic was in sharing it, in sitting shoulder to shoulder in the dimness of a blanket-draped garage corner, planning something big, something secret. And the more complicated our codes got, the more we felt like professionals. We'd create substitution alphabets, write in backward sentences, and sometimes just talk nonsense with a serious face to make it sound like code. It worked. We believed it. And belief, back then, was everything. Sometimes we even swore oaths. Hands raised, fingers crossed, hearts thumping like drums. We swear to protect the hideout, never reveal the code, and always stick together no matter what. The rituals were dramatic, a little silly, but deeply meaningful. They gave structure to our chaos, purpose to our play. And within those pretend ceremonies, there was something real. The feeling of being part of something bigger than ourselves. Something only we understood. Something that couldn't be bought or broken. No technology, no schedules, no adult oversight. Just us. Just the wild freedom of inventing a world where we were the rulers.
where staircases led to treasure and curtain rods became gates to hidden kingdoms. The truth is, it wasn't the clubhouses or the codes that made those moments so special. It was the connection, the way we came together to create something from nothing, to pretend until pretending became real, to guard a cardboard door like it held the secrets of the universe. And maybe, in a way, it did. We never thought of it as nostalgia while we were living it. We were too busy ducking into the shadows of our forts, too focused on decoding invisible ink or defending a secret handshake. But now, those days echo like a song only we can hear. They live on in the fragments we remember. The way sunlight hit the leaves above our hiding spot, the smell of warm grass under our knees, the sound of whispered plans and uncontainable laughter. Our codes were forgotten. Our clubhouses were dismantled, reclaimed by weather and time. But the feeling they gave us, that never left. Because once you've built a world out of nothing but imagination and friendship, you carry it with you forever. Hidden maybe, but always alive, like a secret waiting to be remembered. And there was a kind of thrill in picking up the landline, dialing those familiar digits, and waiting through the scratchy rings, hoping it wouldn't be a parent who answered, and also kind of hoping it would. That strange mix of nerves and hope tightened in your chest as the call connected. If the friend answered, your voice cracked with excitement. If their mom did, you cleared your throat, stood up straight even though she couldn't see you, and asked politely, "Hi, is Daniel home? Can he come out and play?" The tone mattered. You wanted to sound respectful, not too eager, but not bored either. That phone call felt like a ritual, a passage, a ticket to whatever the afternoon might become. Every ring was an adventure waiting on the other end, and sometimes you had to try a few numbers before someone picked up. There was no texting, no instant messaging, no way to know if your friend was grounded, eating dinner, or already outside. That uncertainty made it better. It made it human. The world didn't move on your schedule. You had to wait, to call again, to leave a message, or hang up and run over to their house barefoot, hoping they'd step outside at the same time. And when they did, it felt like fate itself had aligned in your favor. The voice of a parent was its own language. You could usually tell how the day was going just from the way their dad answered. A sharp hello meant no chance. A soft, drawn-out hello meant maybe. If they chuckled after you said your name, that meant they already knew why you were calling, and that was a good sign. Sometimes they'd put the phone down and yell across the house, "Michael, it's for you!" That distant voice through the receiver, their bare feet slapping against the floor as they rushed over, made your heart jump. And when your friend finally picked up with a "Hey," everything brightened. Plans unfolded instantly. Bikes or hide and seek, treehouse or video games, bring water or snacks. There was no coordination app, no schedule synced by digital alerts. There was only the line, the cord that stretched across kitchen counters and hallways, the clicking of buttons that wore out over time, the scribbled list of phone numbers next to the fridge. And every name had a story. You knew which friends had strict parents, which ones never picked up, and which ones always said yes. Sometimes, if you were lucky, their parents would say, "Why don't you come over for dinner too?" That turned an afternoon into a memory. Occasionally, you'd call and hear, "Not today, sweetheart, he's doing homework." And you'd sigh, but understand. There was no fight, no resentment, just the quiet hope that tomorrow might be different. And sometimes they'd call you. You'd rush from wherever you were in the house when your mom shouted, "Phone, it's for you." The race to the receiver was always frantic. The hello came breathless, half laughing, already anticipating the next adventure. Each ring carried weight. Each conversation had magic. We didn't talk long, just enough to confirm who was free and where to meet. Then it was off to the streets, the fields, the backyard. The landline didn't follow you. That was the beauty of it. Once the call ended, the day began. There were no constant notifications pulling us back. Just the voice of a friend, a plan in place, and the whole world waiting outside the door.
And there was something sacred in hearing your friend's mom say, "Hold on, I'll get him." Her voice was gentle, familiar, like a guardian of the gate to fun. Sometimes she'd ask how you were, or remind you to be back before dark. She cared, even if she barely knew you. There was a network of parents like that, a kind of communal safety net. We weren't just our parents' kids, we belonged to the neighborhood. Everyone knew everyone. Everyone looked out. Some afternoons, the phone would ring, and you'd pick up hoping it was for you. And when it wasn't, a little disappointment crept in, but it never lasted, because the next time it would be. Or maybe you'd just ride over to their house instead, knock on the door, and ask in person. It all worked the same way, organically, messily, beautifully. Now, years later, I sometimes hear a landline ring in an old movie or an echoing memory, and it unlocks 1,000 afternoons. The long coil of the cord, the heavy feel of the receiver in your hand, the echo of a voice far away but familiar. It wasn't just about calling a friend. It was about connection, the kind that couldn't be copied or scrolled past. A voice, a moment, a shared question. Can you come out and play? And when the answer was yes, the world opened up again.
As the sun finally dipped below the horizon and the streetlights flickered on with their soft orange glow, the world seemed to sigh in relief and quiet. After hours of laughter, endless games, and adventures that stretched on without pause, my body would feel that delicious ache, the kind that only comes from a day lived fully outside. There were no screens to trap my attention, no buzzing devices demanding my focus. Instead, there was just me, my friends, and the wide open streets that held all the promise in the world. I remember that feeling so clearly, the way my legs would throb just enough to remind me I had been running and jumping, how my hands bore the faintest dirt stains and scratches from climbing trees or digging in the grass. My knees might have been scraped and my shirt a little damp from sweating, but none of that mattered. It was proof of the day's adventures, badges I wore with quiet pride. The exhaustion was not a burden, it was a gift, an honest exhaustion, born from joy and freedom, not from sitting still or stress. Once inside, the ritual was simple but sacred. I'd wash off the dirt from the garden hose or the faucet, the cold water a refreshing contrast to the warm tiredness I carried. The smell of fresh soap mixed with the earthy scent of the outdoors would fill the bathroom. After slipping into pajamas, usually something soft and a little faded from too many washings, I'd climb into bed and feel the weight of the day press down gently on me. The sheets felt cool and inviting, and my eyelids grew heavy almost immediately. There was no need to scroll through a phone or watch another episode. My mind was too full of memories, of secret codes whispered behind tree branches, the sound of wheels on pavement as we raced bikes like we owned the world, the quiet hush of hiding in shadows during hide and seek, the echoes of voices on the other end of a landline call, the taste of cold water from the garden hose. All of it blended into a comforting, warm glow inside me. Have you ever noticed how, as a child, falling asleep after a day like that was effortless? The world would slow down, and you would drift into a deep, untroubled sleep. There were no worries about tomorrow, no anxieties waiting to pounce, just the peaceful surrender to rest, knowing you had given your all to the day's play and friendship. That sleep felt different. It was the sleep of someone who had truly lived, who had embraced the moment with open arms. Sometimes I wonder if today's children will know that kind of rest. Will they feel the pure joy that comes from running until their legs ache? From creating worlds with sticks and stones? From the simple magic of being outside, unconnected yet deeply connected all at once? Will they know the sound of a landline ringing and the hope it carries? Will they remember how it felt to leave home after breakfast and only return when the stars began to peek out? I miss those days. I miss the way the world slowed down enough for us to savor every second of sunlight, every breeze that swept across our faces. The way friendships formed, not through texts or social media, but in the dirt and grass and laughter. How every scraped knee and dirty hand was a story, a memory, a little triumph. So when I finally close my eyes now, I carry those memories with me. The feeling of pure, joyful exhaustion, the softness of the night wrapping around me like a warm blanket, and the peace that only comes from a day well played. I fall asleep with a smile, knowing that those long afternoons still live inside me, timeless and bright. And as I drift off, I ask you, when was the last time you felt that kind of tired, so deeply satisfied and completely free, that your sleep was the sweetest it could be? If you close your eyes right now, can you hear the echoes of those childhood days? And maybe, just maybe, feel that same calm wash over you? Thank you for joining me on this journey back to those golden afternoons when life was simple, laughter was endless, and the world was ours to explore. Until next time, may your dreams be filled with the gentle magic of childhood remembered.